In the heart of the largest Nazi extermination camp, Auschwitz-Birkenau, a group of Jewish prisoners carried out one of the most desperate and heroic acts of World War II. These men were part of the Sonderkommando, a unit composed of prisoners forced to perform the most macabre tasks of the Holocaust, leading victims to the gas chambers, removing their bodies, and operating the crematoria. Living under the constant threat of execution and fully aware that their lifespans were limited as the Nazis routinely killed them to eliminate witnesses, these men decided to fight back. In October 1944, after months of secret planning, they managed to smuggle explosives provided by female prisoners working in a munitions factory. With this improvised dynamite, they blew up Crematorium 4, killing several SS guards and attempting to escape. The revolt was quickly crushed, and around 451 prisoners were executed in retaliation. However, the act remains a symbol of resistance in the face of absolute dehumanization. Amid the industrialized horror of the Holocaust, these men chose to die fighting, leaving behind a legacy of courage that still echoes in memorials and history books today. In April 1942, after months of intense fighting in the Philippines, American and Filipino forces surrendered to the Imperial Japanese Army on the Bataan Peninsula. What followed was one of the most brutal episodes of the Pacific War. Around 75,000 prisoners of war were forced to march over 100 kilometers under a scorching sun, without access to drinking water, food, or any form of medical assistance. The march, which lasted several days, was marked by unspeakable violence. Japanese soldiers beat prisoners with rifle butts, stabbed those who collapsed with bayonets, and summarily executed anyone who tried to rest. Many died from dehydration, heat stroke, or simply collapsed along the way. Their bodies were left to rot by the roadside under the tropical heat. It is estimated that between 10,000 and 18,000 prisoners died during the march. The survivors were taken to prison camps where they continued to suffer abuse, disease, and starvation. The Bataan Death March became a symbol of the cruelty of war and the resilience of those who survived the unimaginable. Decades later, veterans still reported nightmares filled with screams, heat, and the stench of death that haunted every step of that forced journey. The Siege of Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, was one of the longest and most devastating episodes of World War II. For nearly 900 days, from September 1941 to January 1944, the city was surrounded by Nazi and Finnish troops, whose goal was not just to conquer the territory, but to exterminate its population through starvation and isolation. With supply lines cut off, residents endured harsh winters without heating, electricity, or food. Bread, when available, was made with sawdust and wallpaper glue. People ate pets, wallpaper paste, shoe leather, and, in extreme cases, resorted to cannibalism. Official records confirm that entire families froze to death in their apartments, and corpses were left in the streets for days because there was no strength or resources to bury them. Over 1 million civilians died, many of them children and the elderly. Despite the indescribable suffering, the city never surrendered. The resistance of Leningrad became a symbol of Soviet heroism, but also a cruel reminder of the human cost of total war. The trauma of the siege remains alive in Russia's collective memory, and the survivors' testimonies still send chills down the spine.
While the horrors of Nazi concentration camps shocked the world, Imperial Japan was conducting its own macabre experiments in absolute secrecy. Unit 731, located in occupied Manchuria, was a military research center disguised as a water purification facility. In reality, it was a torture laboratory where thousands of prisoners, Chinese, Koreans, Russians, and even Westerners, were used as human guinea pigs. The atrocities included vivisections without anesthesia, limb amputations to study gangrene, freezing of body parts to observe hypothermia, and deliberate infection with diseases like bubonic plague, anthrax, and cholera. Women were raped and forced to become pregnant so scientists could study disease transmission to fetuses. Entire villages were contaminated with biological weapons to test their effectiveness. It is estimated that over 10,000 people died directly in Unit 731's labs, and hundreds of thousands were affected by the weapons tested. Most revolting of all, after the war, many of the scientists responsible escaped prosecution by offering their data to the United States in exchange for immunity. The story of Unit 731 is a grim reminder of how science can be perverted when stripped of ethics and humanity.
In 1939, Poland was invaded simultaneously by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union in accordance with the Non-Aggression Pact between Hitler and Stalin. The following year, around 22,000 Polish army officers, intellectuals, police officers, and community leaders captured by the Soviets were summarily executed by the NKVD, the Soviet secret police. The victims were taken to forests such as Katyn, where they were shot in the back of the head and buried in mass graves. The goal was clear: to eliminate Poland's elite and prevent any future resistance to Soviet control. For decades, the Soviet Union denied responsibility, blaming the Nazis for the massacre. The truth only came to light in 1990, when Moscow finally admitted its guilt. The Katyn massacre was not only a human tragedy, it was also a brutal example of historical manipulation. The victims' families spent decades seeking justice, while the world was kept in the dark. To this day, the episode remains an open wound in Polish-Russian relations and a reminder that war kills not only with weapons, but also with silence and lies.